Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here in our official 1-year meeting. It's amazing. Hard to believe. AJ, can you hear us yet? AJ, do you have sound? Now you do. Okay.
We do now, yes.
Okay. I could tell. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Good, good.
All right, Larry, we are ready to go then.
Perfect. Thank you. So again, welcome and thanks for being here. October, this marks our 1-year anniversary since our startup, and a weird first year it has definitely been. When Josh comes back, I'm going to let him introduce himself real quickly because he doesn't get to be with us. Oh, you're listening.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to grab my
No,
water
you're
bottle.
fine. You're fine. I was just gonna let you, if you want to quickly introduce yourself, and our year has been weird, but your year has been way weirder. So I really appreciate you joining in. And
Yes, and just really vaccinated adults, so that's great. And we're looking forward to the boosters for Pfizer, and then the other boosters coming up, and then kids, if you have kids, 5 to 11-year-olds, those vaccines being available. So just yeah, working through that, and it's just been crazy with how things happen at the feds and the state, and it comes down to us. But really passionate about bicycles and pedestrians. I met with Matthew, it seems like 10 years ago, but it was probably 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. He rode his bike over and we met, and just I've always had a passion about especially the built environment and how that affects the health of the community, from people who are biking 50 miles a day, for triathlons, to people that are biking to the store or to work. So happy to be here.
And Josh, am I correct that are you from Elkin area? Is that right? Or
yes,
somewhere?
I grew up. I went to Elkin High School and grew up between going towards Stone Mountain.
Okay, I have a ton of friends up there and spent a lot of time up there pre-COVID. But I've also really followed the Elkin Trails Association and all that the town of Elkin has done to bring the community together around everything from trail development to just which will lead into some of that community engagement and how we bring some of the other parties together around some activity. So I may tap you for some context there, or connection, some sort, just to see maybe how they got things off the ground.
Yeah,
it's a success that they've had.
Yeah, I've been very impressed, and it's a small town. I think my former childhood doctor, Dr. William Blackley, I think is very involved, and Leslie Schlender was my neighbor. I think she's over. Well, I don't think she's with tourism. Maybe she's with economic development. But it all works together, and it seems to have revitalized Elkin with their Trails Day and their the work they're doing. So yeah, be happy. Yeah.
They have a lot going on. Okay, cool. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. First item, as always, is just to approve the minutes from September. Everyone saw those? Any corrections, additions? No. Motion to approve?
I'll motion they be approved.
Thanks, AJ. Have a second?
I'll second.
Keith, second.
Okay. I'll go through the roster for the vote.
Okay, great.
Keith voted yes. Carol, how do you vote?
Yes.
Michael, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sharon?
Approve.
And Joshua?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. So in our first year, we've been able to sort of narrow down our focus, come up with some buckets that we want to work within. We have looked through the city bike plan and we've made our recommendations on priority project. Our 1 year mark, one of the things that comes up is officer transition. So from our charter, officer terms are 1 year. And so I'm thinking in the November meeting, but we could do it today if you guys feel ready. To be thinking about officers. So there's a chair and a vice chair. Currently I'm chair and Keith is vice chair. I guess I'll just pause and Keith, feel free to jump in. I know you've, I think would like to transition to a non-official status committee member out of an officer role so that you can support some other things as well as do all your fleet feet and everything else that you do, which is a lot. Time commitment, I would just put this out there for those who are wondering what you'd be stepping into if you were to raise your hand or want to nominate someone. It's a very manageable position. I would say I've been on our monthly meeting here. I do a few things in between that and just communication, a couple of emails and that kind of thing. But it's not as daunting perhaps as other officer roles might be in other types of organizations. I would put that out there. But for someone who's committed and engaged and really wants to and has a little bit of wiggle room in your schedule, it's a great, I don't want to say it's easy because I don't want to downplay the position for anyone, but it's definitely manageable. This is not a super intensive nonprofit board chair kind of thing where you get, 3 other committee meetings plus. So far, we don't have any drama, anything like that. Keith, anything you want to add or state?
Yeah, I would just back that up and saying that it's been a fun year to do this and to have the extra conversation once a month with Matthew and Sharon has been some good conversations there. Certainly learned a lot. I think for me, it's just predictability the last year with just some of the pivots and adjustments. Listening to AJ's, just other than just I need to. My time is so unpredictable. It's just the reason I couldn't commit to doing it for another year. Otherwise, I'd be more than happy to.
Sharon, I think the ideal situation would be for the vice chair to step into the chair role. And if Keith wants to take a step back, would you be willing to be chair for another year and somebody come in as vice chair to work beside you for a year? It may even help Matthew a little bit to have some stability in those two roles. Or
Carol, and I just say that that was sort of my expectation as well. And I just knew that I could not, I could not rightfully, say, oh, I'm going to, be great stepping into that role. That was kind of my fear, was that I couldn't take the next step. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. And maybe I'm brand new, so, or I feel like I'm new. So maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Maybe AJ or Michael would be willing to step into that chair role. I don't know.
Yeah, Carol, I think that consistency piece is important. And again, this has been our first year, so we have all been learning how this learning process and how we fit in to the overall umbrella and that kind of thing, and then what we might be able to impact in the community. I spent many years. I finished leadership Winston-Salem in 2009, and then I was on one of the program committees for a really long time, at least 6 years. And leadership, I love how they transition their program committees, so they have a really structured, set in stone process where you come in as vice chair, you roll into chair, and then you roll into the past chair, and that allows basic structure and logistics to stay really consistent. You can answer questions about what has been done, what didn't work, who you know in the community, but then you also get fresh ideas, and so there's sort of this natural progression. To answer your question, I would be willing. The uncertainty of the world make towards that and transitioning in, whether it's mid-year or at the end of another year, would be good.
Okay.
With that idea in mind about transitions and not to disqualify anyone who has a shorter term, I know we're all kind of on staggered 2 or 3 year terms. So thinking ahead, in 1 year, if we're doing this, and ideally we would want a vice chair, at least one of those officers, to be able to kind of continue. That might be something to think about too. And kind of related, are we still, it probably doesn't change the timing of when we need to elect new officers, but are we still waiting for city council to appoint 1 or 2 replacement members?
So I can answer that one. So we have 10 members currently, and so we
Okay.
are waiting on an additional member to join.
Okay. Do you know how they will, like how their term will work? Will they start anew 2 or
That's a
3
good
years?
question.
I don't know the details of how that works, but I can
Okay.
certainly figure
Yeah,
that out and report back.
Okay. Not trying to overcomplicate the officer discussion, but just curious how that works.
Yeah, that's a great question, because if they're replacing someone, they could keep that original person's term or start fresh. Carol, do you by chance know how your term was set?
They said I was filling someone else's term, so they said I was in for 1 year. But they also said, when they said that typically when people are committee members for the city and they get on the committee, they pretty much can stay until they decide that they don't want to stay. So that's what they told me.
I've been trying to
formulate.
formulate that question in my head, because the Public Art Committee, I'm just going to say some of those people have been on there for 20 years.
And I don't know if I should have said that out loud on this recorded call, but that's what they told me.
Now no one's going to volunteer.
I probably have more free time being retired than anyone else. And I would be happy to step into the vice chair role.
I would love to nominate you for that. Is anyone else interested in serving as an officer? That is a no.
That was a hard head shake there, Michael.
Not at this time.
Yeah. Call you out. I'm sorry.
Are we ready to move forward with a nomination, Matthew? Or
Yeah, you can make that nomination at any point you'd like, and if we have a
Okay.
second, then we can take a vote on that.
Okay. I would nominate Carol.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Keith, you know, I don't want to lose you, right? It's not that we want you to go anywhere.
Oh no, this is. Believe me, I want to be I want to be more active next year than I have been this year. I just know that predictability, just with some of the decisions we've had to make with business and shutting some parts of our business down and picking them up. I just know that I couldn't. I like to be a plug and play rather than a. It's the right thing to do.
I told someone the other day, I used to be the person who, if things weren't changing fast enough, I would create change. But this past 18 months has fully cured me of that need. I do not I'm done. We can go back to stability anytime.
And Sharon, just to clarify, so that was a nomination of Carol for the vice chair position, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And Keith made the second on that. So I will go through the voting on that. Keith voted yes. Carol, how do you vote?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Sharon made the motion. AJ?
Yes.
And Joshua?
Yes.
All right.
Do we need
Congratulations, Carol.
to,
And
do we
then,
need to make a motion to extend Sharon for another year or?
Correct, yes. Yep, we'll have to do that one as well.
Okay, I make a motion that Sharon remain in the chairman's position for another year.
a second.
Okay, we'll go through the roster to vote.
For Sharon's benefit, and I don't know that she wants this idea out there, but is it within our power to say that's a 6 months, or would you be more comfortable 6 months and then a known transition, or to go for a year?
No idea.
I think the way the ordinance is set up, it's for a year. And
Okay.
I think if we need to make a change before that, I think that would be up to the group then. Any other discussion or questions? Okay. Let's see. So we will go ahead with the vote then. Keith, how do you vote on that?
Approved.
All right. Carol made the motion. Michael, how do you vote?
Approved.
Sharon?
Approve.
AJ made the second, and Joshua.
Approved.
Motion passes. Both of those.
Thank you. And Keith, a lot of fun, and I learn a lot from you about different pockets of activity and community events and that kind of thing. So you're going to remain on the top list of folks to ping for all kinds of stuff and questions. Okay, so moving forward on our agenda, it's 9:22, so I think we have at least 20-25 minutes to spend on this. Our topic that we were going to dive into now that we've wrapped up the bike plan recommendations was communication. And this is something that has come up in multiple conversations over the past year. I think it probably came up in our very first meeting last October. How we communicate, how we appropriately liaison with other pieces of this cog, what types of things get communicated, and how to better disseminate those, how to build engagement, how to build on education efforts, and just generally get our entire community and all the cross sections aware of our committee and the possibilities to create some positive change for residents and visitors. So just for me, and kind of thinking about this, because that's a big, broad topic, right? I was just kind of making some notes around like who currently communicates out, and that's who are the official communication channels. And then who are those community groups out there who are doing communication? And then the types of communication needs, safety and events and just engagement and advocacy. And I think if I'm sort of envisioning, and again, I'm just talking. So this is kind of a brainstorming meeting. We don't really have an action item out of this. I'm envisioning putting together some kind of mapping of these channels, entities, organizations, clubs, all of those pieces. And then somehow we'll create a plan on maybe identifying some folks to start liaisoning with, maybe identifying folks who can be really supportive and help us move the needle on some things, working with the city better, the county, just all of those pieces. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I'm envisioning one of Carol's fabulous, master spreadsheets that maps all of this out in some way, and then us figuring out who we need to connect to and why, make it purposeful with the city and some of the resources there to even start to develop some material. So whether that's graphics that can be shared on social media around education or safety needs, how to report a scooter in the middle of the road, any of that kind of stuff, to really building out what does better support of a community event look like? What does broader invitation for engagement or involvement look like? Some of those kinds of things. I'll pause and stop talking because this is a topic that I could get long-winded about really quickly.
Hey, I just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I think, one, some experience we got over the last 18 or 19 months with COVID, and I know Matthew works, Ed McNeil with the city has been awesome with his media messaging. I mean, he helped us with putting messaging out. He can produce, his team can do some great graphics, videos, almost like short documentaries. He got some, I think, some national awards for some of the stuff he's put together.
That's cool.
Some of it, I guess, they can drive. I know the city's Facebook page, what is it? It's like 60 or 80,000 likes or followers. But it can also get the attention of the local media because he was local media, Ed. But then the other one is, you talked about the resources map for SAT. It's Dr. Joseph Sloop. Joseph has a PhD in like GIS mapping, and he's technically kind of city. He's one of those positions, kind of like Aaron King is in planning, and there's a few other positions, August Vernon in emergency management, where they kind of straddle between city and county. So they literally are answer to usually a assistant city manager, and assistant county manager. And Joseph Sloop is in that. He's got a team of about 4 or 5 people. And it might be a neat resource if you wanted on one of these future meetings to show he can map out, like he helped us map out testing facilities and look at vaccine uptake by census tract. And I know him and Dr. Russ Smith, sorry if I'm going long here, with Winston-Salem State University in their spatial justice studio. They're really looking at doing some studies, looking at, the areas, looking at parts of the county. But one of the big things we talked about last week was looking at like walkability, bike friendly places, sidewalks, tree canopy, things that affect, if you got an area with lots of sidewalks, but there's no tree canopy, how much are people going to walk in August? Same with bike lanes and potholes. It looks at and connectedness too. Obviously, a road that's connected to others. There's some resources that are real helpful.
Those are great to know about. Matthew or Joshua, do either of you know if that spatial justice studio was involved in the Walkable Winston-Salem conversations?
I don't recall if they certainly weren't actively involved. I think we had representation from WSSU, but I don't recall exactly who that was and in what capacity, what department that was.
Okay. Seems like both should know about one another. Those are great. Thanks, Joshua.
It's funny. The theme of the last year for me has been this discoverability, right? Or discover, I've just discovered all of these resources. There's no shortage of pockets of activity, and the bringing together of that, making it known, to me is, I just feel like super powerful, because we just need to get more people in the know. I'll give you one small example. We had a conversation in our mid-month meeting about just maintenance at Salem Lake Trail. My daughter crashed her bike you know, on a bike ride there a few weeks ago with the cycling classic, and you know, because there were some ruts that went across the trail, and you know, made it, you know, I guess an experienced cyclist would bunny hop them, but you know, she didn't know how to do that. Next thing you know, she's on the ground. So I talked to Matthew, and you know, CityLink was the way to report that. And until that moment, like, it would have never. I've ridden across those ruts 50 times in the last year, but never even occurred to me to report them, how to report them. You know, I got an email just yesterday about that the case had been closed, but I don't know if that means it's been handed to Parks and Rec or if that means they've been fixed. I haven't been out there, but it just seems it's something as silly as that, you know, just how to report an issue, so that we could start to get more common person engagement and plugging in, you know. And again, that seems like a stupid example, but I think that's the disconnect between how many resources we actually have and how many people actually plug into them. To me, that's the formula.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And we often fall into the, you know, I've put it out there, and so it's checked off the list and you're moving on to a million other things on your list. But, you know, Facebook is a great example. I recently, I just found that I was seeing less and less of the stuff that was important to me. You know, close friends or even family members were saying, did you see so-and-so, this happened? And I wasn't. So I cleaned up my friends list. And I was really taken aback to see how many of my friends had left Facebook in the past. I don't know how long, because I don't know when it happened, but there were probably 30 individuals on my personal list who are no longer using that platform. And then I had, you know, another 20 or so who were no longer living. And so it's an interesting thing to me that it has become such a common, true with any social media, but yet at the same time, if you're actively using it, you don't realize how many others aren't. My daughter's 23, and in building a new special ed club chapter at UNCG, she's finding that people who are undergraduate have never used Facebook. Now, that's just 2 and 3 years behind her. So how quickly these platforms change and these channels change, and you have to use, and this is coming from my professional communications background, to get information out to people, you have to use 40 different things and say things 40 different ways to really reach everyone. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And even then you'll have people going, oh, I never knew that. And there are also just those things like trail maintenance. I didn't know that until this past year either, that I could make a request. There was a tree that was over, you know, one of those, like every time a road went a couple of inches further down, and I'm looking at it thinking at some point that's going to fall on someone around Salem Lake. And ended up standing with a guy on a bike on one side and a guy on a bike and me on a bike on the other, and both of us looking at this going, I wonder where do we go? who do we tell to take this thing down before it crashes onto one of us or someone? We don't know those things. They're just not commonplace, or you think it's nature and it's just nature doing its thing. I mean, communications is complicated and it's really complicated.
I think the same could be said, you know, getting that link, no pun intended, to CityLink where people know. I mean, and that could be at Salem Lake, but it could be at 4th and Highland, where aside the city government, you know, we don't have the resources to send people just to drive intersection, and just and I'm sure that the places where there are complaints, or where there's not where there, you know, people say, hey, this is an issue, then the city goes there, or county, wherever, to fix that. But I've even seen some research that say in some areas people don't don't do that because they either don't know or they don't think it'll get fixed, and then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't. And I think, to your point too, it could, you know, you would hate to see that people stopped going to Salem Lake because of some ruts.
Mhm.
And then this is a downward spiral. The same, I guess, with, well, nobody's using the sidewalks. Well, this, you know, just
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably continue to expect the channels and how we need to use them to communicate this information to change. But I really like the idea of mapping out all the types of information that we think are relevant for this. And then, you know, like Keith was saying in his example, I think for a lot of those things, and even the other sources that Joshua mentioned, we're going to be able to plug in existing places that information exists and can be accessed. But it's having a centralized place to easily direct citizens to go to get to that stuff. You know, instead of having to know this thing falls under the purview of Parks and Rec, I'm going to go to their page and email them. This thing falls under Forsyth County. So, you know, I think that's tying that all together and then kind of having a hub where we can direct people. Even I think it was last month when we were talking about micromobility, it was news to me that, you know, those programs were required to, or those vendors were required to have like a discounted program for low income and a way to pay in cash without the app. I don't know how, you know, how well that's known. So obviously it can't be utilized. So I think just finding a way to bring all of that information together is the key. And then it can get pushed out on social media and stuff. But I think, Sharon, you're right. We got to start with mapping all that out.
So if we were to make a list of sort of the official communication platforms right now, I know it's City of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Health Department actually has a great communication platform. Who are the others? What are other entities or organizations that might be, or maybe I shouldn't say official, but like the key stakeholders in bicycling, walkability, active mobility?
I guess if we're kind of thinking about everyone, not necessarily official municipal things, I'd add Winston-Salem Cycling Advocacy Network to that.
Michael,
Orba.
not through your, oh, go ahead.
A Forba for trail stuff.
Yep. So for those of you, that's Forsyth Off-Road Bicycle Association. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm fine,
Yeah.
thank you.
You know, AJ brought up Winston-Salem Can, and I know they have debris in bike lanes. So I think that's pretty important. You know, we probably all see people put their yard waste in the bike lane, but they have a direct connection with the subcontractors that clean the street. So, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that's valuable information to know as we wonder where to communicate these things we see.
That's great.
I mean, certainly the bike shops, you know, a lot of them put out newsletters. So if it's, you know, valuable enough or pertinent enough, they could put it out through their channels as well.
And I'd add the micromobility vendors too, because that arm kind of operates in a separate way since they're private companies, but they're pushing out information too. Does anyone know of a similar pedestrian organization or group?
Are you looking for things like Black Women Run and that type of organization as well?
I put together a list, Sharon, of the running and walking group.
Now, are there walking groups? I mean, I'm sure there are, but yeah, I feel like Donna might have some intel on that. She's not with us today, but
The Safe Routes to School program, we could channel information through the school system through that avenue as well.
I saw recently the Parks and Recs is organizing some walks in the parks. And they do a great job on Instagram. They probably also do it on Facebook as well. But I see daily things from the Parks and Recs department about activities that are going on.
okay. I may need to search them out. I don't see that. And then what about, part of this is around sidewalks and public transportation and the microphone connecting with either the folks managing those. I mean, obviously I can connect with the Flow Bike Share, but the scooters and that kind of thing, have the owners or operators, or who would engage from that side?
So we as staff, we coordinate with the micro mobility companies, to make sure that they're adhering to the policies that the city has, and just general coordination on those programs. So if there are messages we want to share with them for them to broadcast, we can certainly do that. One thing I would add to this discussion is just looking at the steering committee that we put together for the pedestrian master plan. There are, probably a couple dozen different organizations that we engaged with on that. So just off the top of my head, I can certainly share this list in the minutes, but just looking at that list, we have NCDOT, Creative Corridors Coalition, the colleges and universities, the Housing Authority, the Piedmont Triad Regional Council. There are, numerous organizations that have some kind of stake in this, this transportation area. So those are all potential partners. The Transit Authority, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation. There are a lot of groups out there that this group could be connected to help broadcast the messages that you're interested in sharing. So I'll make sure to include that list in the minutes so that everybody can see those organizations. To include that list in the minutes so that everybody can see those organizations.
That's great. And then for the micromobility, I knew you were going to have some updates today, and if you want to go ahead and share those on the contracts, that's great. But going back to the question around how people know about the discommunications, or is the city doing that on behalf of those contracts? Where does that fall?
So we do not, as the city, we do not do that on behalf of those companies. So that's part of what we ask those companies to explain in their application and the review process. One of the factors that we look at is how are they reaching out to the community, and what methods are they're planning to use. And just one example, one of the companies that we were reviewing applications, one of the companies had a new approach for reaching out to folks who may qualify for, say, the low income discount, and they were actually going to identify where rides begin, and if those scooter rides would begin in a low income area in the city, then that user would automatically get a message about that low income rate that the company offers. So they were proactively reaching out to folks who may qualify for a discount. So it's those kinds of innovations that the companies are really good at coming up with, and we can then work with those companies to make sure those are implemented, and that the customers here have the opportunity to take advantage of them.
That's great.
I wanted to mention, because I did look it up last month when we were talking about it. On the city's website, there's a shared mobility page that does have a section at the bottom about cash and non-smartphone access, and links directly to each vendor's like page about that. So I don't know how easily that's found if you're not specifically searching for it, but that is available somewhere through the city site.
Okay.
Matthew, are you aware of other cities that have organizations like this committee?
Sure. Yeah. Most cities, our size or greater do have some kind of bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. I know Durham does, Raleigh, Greensboro. So
Plans they have, or how they had organized or started some of that work? It's
So
sometimes
I've reached out to the staff liaisons, with several of those committees just to learn more about how they operate in general. I have not reached out to them about communications, but I think that's something that this group certainly could do. I could find the contact information for, say, the chair and vice chair for those different committees, and then you all could use those contacts to find out what they have done. I think I'd be happy to do that.
I think that's a great idea. I don't know about the other cities. I know that the Durham committee has been around for 20 years. So I'm sure they probably have
oh my gosh,
some things that they learned the hard way they could tell us about.
I would be very willing to do some of that reaching out, and would love for someone to partner with me on that, because 2 years are better than 1, or 4 years are better than 2, I should say.
Yeah, I'd definitely volunteer for that, Carol, if you want to loop me in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be great. We've got some, I think, strong model communities: Asheville, Elkin, Greensboro, Cary, all the RDU area seems to be doing a really great job of broad community engagement and partnership around these types of things. Okay. So perhaps between this and our November meeting, if we could get that list of contacts, and I'd be happy to, as I'm able, I'd be happy to sit in or make forays into connecting with those entities as well. But we can reach out to some of those, try to get some more information, and then in November we can look at types of communication needs and how these other how those other cities are doing it, who they're pulling together, and how they're partnering. And then among this list that we've created, we can start looking at how to do the same. And then on the types of communication, what gets communicated and how, like someone at the last meeting, or maybe it was Keith, I don't remember, talked about creating that list of some of these groups, so that as key information comes up that needs to be shared, we can get it to Amy Easter or some of these key individuals who can then cascade it out to their groups, chapters, all their organizations. Thanks, AJ. I just saw that in the chat. Awesome. Any other thoughts on that? I did want to leave a few minutes just for some general updates, but I don't want to cut this off.
just one more thought about this as we kind of build this list and map it out. I think it's really important to kind of go, at least start, even err on the side of being too broad and include a lot of other city departments that maybe we wouldn't think of. Like someone mentioned, yard waste in the bike lane or sidewalk or something. And I think there's greater degree with like sanitation is related to that, can communicate things about where you should put a big pile of limbs, or trash cans or whatever. So I think it'd be great to kind of keep those other departments in mind too for some of those items.
It's a great suggestion. Anything else? So Matthew, did you want to share the new micromobility? Have those been set now, contracts?
They haven't been set yet. I think,
Okay.
come our next meeting, we'll have official kind of confirmation of who the vendors are. But I think one thing I will note is that there was some really good innovation in the proposals. That one feature I mentioned about being proactive about reaching out to people who may qualify for the low income discount. There was features like that. There were new programs for offering free rides for healthcare professionals. There were the provision of docking / charging stations that would help us kind of solve some of the sidewalk parking issues we've had. There were offers of cash pay stations. So those without credit cards could pay cash and then essentially get a debit card from the companies so that they could use those cards then to pay for their rides. So there were a number of innovations and ways to expand the reach of the program. So there were some really good, some good features offered this year. So the companies are continuing to think about ways that they can improve the systems and provide those kinds of innovations. So come November, we should have everything settled, but the services should continue as normal for now, and then we'll have some of those new innovations coming online over the course of the next several months.
That's great. Thanks.
Matthew, I think this. Oh, sorry. I have a question
Go ahead.
related to that. I think this came up last meeting, Matthew, but can you remind me, is like ridership data, just kind of in a very general sense, available for the current vendors?
It is. So that's one of the great things about the program is that, all of the devices have GPS capabilities. So we do get data, and that's one of the requirements of all the companies is that they make that data available to the city. So we do run monthly reports on the number of rides and where those rides are happening, all anonymized data. So if maybe for November, if you'd like, I can bring a sample of some of those reports to show how the ridership has changed over the course of the year and where that ridership is happening. Is that something the group would want?
Yeah, I would definitely be
Okay.
interested in that. I
Okay.
think it'd be great to see, where that's being used. I think we all probably see people using them here and there, but just kind of on a ad hoc basis to see now that we've all been through pedestrian master plan and have an idea of where the priorities are for that. I'm curious where people are using the micromobility.
Sure. And the timing is good because this is our first October, a full picture of the year and how the ridership has changed over the course of the year.
Any other questions on that? Michael, do you want to just how things?
Sure. Yeah, it was a great time for those that were able to come out and just check it out. A lot of high speed action, a little bit of carnage. I mean, I thought we had some really good participation. The crowds were a little bit slimmer than we had hoped, but there was, even just right downtown, there was a lot going on just up the street, from the Bookmarks Festival, and then there was a car show going on one day, up on Trade Street, and so I think we were just kind of competing for people's attention, and I think we might have failed a little bit on getting the word out, just overall about the combination of the bike races and the concerts. I think there's a miscommunication with a lot of folks that I don't even know if they're aware of the criterium racing. I think they think of the classic and they solely think of the road race, and they're like, why? I didn't see it come by my house. So we've got to do a better job of even getting out into the neighborhood and along that route, just to let people know, hey, there's a lot of action down at Bailey Park. So we've got a lot of work to do on our end. But overall, it was a great success, and yeah, we've decided to do it again in the fall for 2022.
Really? Okay.
So yeah, we'll be finalizing those dates. We have a meeting tomorrow. So hopefully we can nail down, and we're probably going to do the final USA Crits championship race again. They've given us the offer to host it. So yeah, we're just trying to figure out with that calendar, and then we obviously have competing against Wake Forest football and stuff. So we're just really trying to find an ideal weekend. But it's kind of hard because some of those schedules aren't even out yet, and won't be for months. But yeah, we're going to have to make a decision and determine what the date is. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a great success. I'd love any feedback from people that were out there participating in the events, and or just spectating, whatever, anything positive and negative. I certainly value all that.
I think a lot, Tour to Tanglewood. I didn't even realize that was going on, which is unusual. I usually am seeing people fundraise and build teams for that, but only Sunday of that weekend did I realize that was going on at the same time. And that pulls a lot of the cycling enthusiasts who are regulars at that, but also would have normally been watching the races. Might have been
absolutely, and we didn't realize that until definitely months ago. We had conversations with Bike MS several months back, and so we had just decided not to do a Fondo this year, and that was primarily the reason, just right. Because we didn't want to compete against that. So yeah, but yeah, we also missed a lot of cycling spectators.
All right. We are at 10 o'clock. Thank you all.
Sharon, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to share a couple quick things before we go. One, I posted a link to the North Carolina Bike Walk Summit. That summit is coming up November 4th through the 6th. So that would be a great opportunity for this group, the folks on this group, to meet, I imagine, representatives from other BPACs from around the state, and other folks just generally involved with bike and walk advocacy and planning and engineering. So that link is there. Registration, they actually have a choose your price registration, so it's extremely affordable. And there is an in-person component, and there's also an online component for the summit this year. It's being held in Durham. So please do check that out. Definitely worth registering for that. And then one quick update about the bicycle master plan work that you all had done. Our intention is to take an item to the Public Works Committee of City Council in December to update them on the work that this group had done and your recommendations, and kind of flesh out some of those recommendations with details about what aspects of those projects we've already completed, what is left to do, some cost estimates attached to those recommendations, and then get feedback from the Public Works Committee on what they would like to see. So the work that you had done, we're going to move forward with that and take it to Public Works. So I had asked Keith and Sharon to join that meeting and provide generally an update about what this group has done and the work you have completed so far. So it'll be a great opportunity for us to share generally what the BPAC has been up to, but also specifically about the bicycle master plan work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone? Last comments? Okay. We will connect again in November. Thanks all. Have a great rest of your day, rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.